The one area of the market that's been really hot that makes no sense to us is in the financial space. We actually think, this may be a big call, but I actually think that at least 3 of the 4 banks have completely lost their competitive advantage. And if I just explain that for a second. So a bank is a pretty simple proposition. They need people to give them deposits so that they can then lend that money to borrowers, right? And so your 2 groups of customers are the people that give you deposits and then the people that borrow from you, right? And the banks have done a pretty good job at irritating both groups of customers for a long time. And so it hasn't taken much for a serious competitor to come along in Macquarie and disrupt that equation. And because of what the banks have done, they're allowing that disruption to happen really easily, and we think it may well accelerate. On the deposit side, the way banks have treated their customers for years is, to me, absurd. So when you get 50 basis points in your savings account, right, when the cash rate's near 4, they are effectively charging you 3.5% as a management fee annually for them to hold your money, right? I mean, the funds management industry gets criticised for fees all the time, and yet you look at that situation and you think it's absolutely ridiculous. And so all it took was Macquarie to come along and say, well, actually, why don't we give you something that's pretty close to the cash rate? And all of a sudden, they are attracting an enormous flow of deposits because you can get 3.9% at call up to a couple of $1 million, and then it doesn't drop that much, actually, even if you are in the uber wealthy camp that has more cash sitting on the sidelines than that. And so then you think about the other side of the equation. What about the borrower side? Well, the great thing about NAB, ANZ and Westpac is they've completely cut their tie with the end customer in the majority of cases. So more than 70% of loans that they write today in the mortgage market go through a mortgage broker. So they don't have a relationship with the end customer anymore. They have a relationship with the mortgage broker. That is an absolute disaster for the banks that hasn't really come to fruition until, I think, now. Right? Because all it means is that the mortgage broker is the customer. They only care about 2 things. They care about the lowest rate that you can offer to their client, and they care about turnaround times.
Yeah.
So if you can compete on those 2 things, you can take share away from the majors very, very easily. And we're not talking about them relying on this channel for 5% or 10%. It's north of 70% of the mortgages they write, right? For those 3 banks, CBA is actually the inverse, more than 70%. Come from their direct advisors. So they have effectively outsourced that relationship, which means that Macquarie can come along and steal that relationship very, very easily, right? And they're able to do that because they have a natural cost advantage, right? So if you think about Macquarie, what's their cost advantage? They've got the best tech stack, right? Somewhat unbelievably, Westpac's just about to start an integration of, I think, 18 or 19 systems that go back to St George days, which is somewhat remarkable. Right. Well, Macquarie don't have that. They don't have a legacy tech stack. And then really importantly, they don't have branches. Try depositing cash with Macquarie. You can't. Yeah. It's very, very difficult, right? It's electronic only. But these days, that's what a lot of people care about. They want to transfer funds electronically, right? And so that's meant that they've actually got a superior proposition in terms of the return on equity that they can deliver, right? Making the same loan at the same price as their peers. Right. And just to put this in context, they've gone from 3% to 4% to 5% to 6.2% over recent years of the mortgage market. In July this year, July 2025, they were responsible for 39% of the growth in loans in the mortgage market.
Wow.
Right. So we had thought even prior to that data coming out that on the basis of the track record over the last couple of years, they would probably go past ANZ and NAB in market share in the next decade. Well, if they continue with this sort of acceleration, it's going to happen a lot more quickly than that. So we actually think, 3 of the 4 banks have completely lost their competitive advantage. The only advantage they have left is incumbency or people's unwillingness to move. But when you see the value proposition both on the deposit side and the lender side, we think that inertia will start to change, or they'll have to respond, in which case that lowers their own margins over time. So for a part of the market that makes up a quarter of the ASX 200, it's reasonably extraordinary. We think that this isn't getting more airtime.
But you're sort of bullish Macquarie.
Well, Macquarie are the other side of that equation, which we are comfortable with the returns that they think that they are generating in the mortgage market. We hear that they are very strong given their lower cost structure, which is why they are competing aggressively. And we can't see any reason at the moment why that shouldn't continue, if not accelerate.